Do you believe in the word perfect? I used to. I used to believe I lived in a perfect marriage and a perfect family without a single cloud in the sky. I had a husband. Any woman would desire a mother-in-law more understanding than my own mother, an adorable and intelligent son, and a career that I myself was proud of. The portrait of my family in everyone's eyes was beautiful, so radiant it seemed to have not a single blemish. But ladies and gentlemen, sometimes what is too perfect hides the most terrible secrets. And I discovered that secret not through jealousy or arguments. I learned it from an innocent phrase from my 5-year-old son. A phrase that forever tore down the velvet curtain of a feigned happiness. That night, like so many other quiet nights in our sprawling house in the suburbs of New York City, my husband James had gone to bed early, saying he was a bit tired. My mother-in-law Carol had also retired to her room. Only Noah, my son, and I were left sitting together on the soft wool rug in the library. I was reading him a fairy tale about a prince and a princess. The atmosphere was incredibly warm and filled with love. When the story ended, I closed the book, kissed his forehead, and said, "All right, my little prince, it's time for bed. It's getting late." Noah rubbed his eyes, yawned deeply, and suddenly looked up. His big, clear, round eyes met mine, and he said with the purest innocence, "Mommy, yesterday I saw Miss Sophie give Daddy a kiss just like you do." The word kiss in a child's language was unequivocal. My hand, which was stroking his hair, froze midair. My ears were ringing. The room, serene until that moment, suddenly felt suffocating, unbreathable. My son's sentence was like a lightning bolt that without warning struck my mind and left me stunned. I tried to force a smile, but I knew how twisted and strained it was. "What are you saying, my prince?" I tried to keep my voice from trembling. "You must have seen it wrong. Miss Sophie is your tutor." "Why would she kiss Daddy? You must have dreamed it right." But Noah shook his head vigorously, his little mouth pouting with a very serious expression. "No, Mommy, I saw it for real. It was last night when you were in the meeting in your office. I went down to the kitchen for some water and saw Miss Sophie and Daddy there. She stood on her tiptoes and gave him a kiss. And then Daddy gave her one too, just like in the cartoons." Every word from my son was clear and precise, with no trace of imagination. A 5-year-old doesn't know how to lie about things like that. I felt as if someone was squeezing my heart. I couldn't breathe. I quickly hugged him. A very tight hug, partly to reassure him and partly to hide the collapse happening inside me. "Oh, it must be because Miss Sophie cares for Daddy a lot. That's why she gave him a kiss on the cheek, honey. Just like I give you." "It's nothing, my boy. Come on, let's get you to bed." I lifted him into my arms and rushed him to his room. I tucked him in, sang him a lullaby, but my head was in chaos. The image of my husband and the young tutor, their furtive kiss in the kitchen, spun relentlessly. A woman's intuition, a vague unease I had tried to ignore for a long time, resurfaced with overwhelming force. My perfect world had just suffered a crack, a very small crack, but enough to know that beneath that beautiful facade, a silent storm was brewing. To understand why my son's words shattered me that way, let me tell you the story of my seemingly idyllic life. My name is Evelyn, I'm 35 years old, and I am the founder and CEO of a fairly well-known lifestyle brand in the United States. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. Everything I have today I built with my own hands, with sweat, tears, and many sleepless nights. Perhaps because I had been through so many hardships, once I achieved success, I craved something incredibly simple, a family home. And I thought I had found it when I met James. He was a talented and elegant marketing director, warm and attentive. What made me fall for him was that he wasn't intimidated by my success. He said he loved the person I was, my strength and determination. He was always my unconditional support, the man willing to stand behind me to back every one of my decisions. We had a dream wedding and an adorable son, Noah. My life at that moment was truly full. I had my career, a supportive husband, and a good son. After my father-in-law passed away prematurely, I brought my mother-in-law Carol to live with us so we could take better care of her. My mother-in-law was an incredibly understanding woman. She never interfered in my work. She always encouraged me, took care of me, and was proud of me, bragging to everyone about her successful daughter-in-law. She treated me better than her own daughter. I thought I couldn't ask for more. My life went on in peace and happiness until a few months ago Sophie appeared. That day, my mother-in-law came home unexpectedly with a young woman. She introduced her as Sophie, the daughter of a dear friend of hers from her hometown who had passed away. The girl had just started college in New York. Her family was struggling financially. and she was alone in the city with no one to lean on. It breaks my heart, Carol told me, her voice full of pity. What do you think if we let her stay with us for a while, dear? The house is big enough. It would be a good deed, and besides, she's very smart. She could help Noah with his studies. Seeing the young woman with her thin frame, big innocent eyes, and simple clothes standing timidly at the door, I agreed without hesitation. I too had been through hard times. I understood what it was like to feel lost in a strange city. And so, Sophie became a member of our family as a guest, and as Noah's tutor. She played her part perfectly. She was polite, hardworking, and took care of Noah with dedication. Both my husband and I grew very fond of her. I didn't have the slightest suspicion. I saw her as a little sister. But now, after my son's words, I started connecting the dots. I remembered the times I came home late from work and found James and Sophie chatting animatedly in the living room. I remembered the strange glances they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. I also remembered the times my mother-in-law very casually created opportunities for them to be alone. James, stay home and take Sophie to buy some books for Noah, will you? Evelyn and I are just running to the grocery store. Or tonight Evelyn has a work dinner and will be back late. You have dinner with Sophie, don't wait up for her. All those details I had previously considered normal displays of affection now appeared as pieces of a well-orchestrated plot. A chill ran down my spine. Was it possible that the perfection I was living in was just a play? Was it possible that my husband and my mother-in-law, the two people I trusted most, were conspiring together to deceive me? A plan to uncover the truth began to form in my mind. I knew I had to act, but with extreme caution. If this story seems intriguing and worth following, don't hesitate to hit the subscribe button, like, and share to give us more motivation. What will Evelyn do to unmask the truth? And how terrible will the secret behind the relationship of her husband, her mother-in-law, and the young tutor be? See you in the next part. In the previous part, an innocent phrase from Noah planted a seed of doubt in my heart, Evelyn's cracking the until then perfect picture of my family. But for you to understand the magnitude of that shock, allow me to repaint in more detail this supposed dream life I once had. It was a picture any woman would envy, a fullness I myself believed would last forever. My lifestyle company was growing non-stop, becoming a recognized brand not only in the U.S., but also with a presence in the international market. I was busy under pressure, but I never felt alone because behind me there was always a man, James, my husband. Our love, after 7 years of marriage, hadn't faded. He maintained the habit of bringing me a glass of warm water every time I worked late. He remembered the anniversary of the day we met and always surprised me with small romantic gestures. James was not only an attentive husband but also a wonderful father. Every afternoon he was the one who picked Noah up from school and played and read stories to him with infinite patience. The image of father and son together in our small garden was the best balm for my soul, erasing all the fatigue of a long day. Furthermore, he was my right hand at the company. As chief marketing officer, he had developed successful campaigns with me that contributed enormously to the brand's growth. Everyone in the company admired us. They said we were the golden couple, a perfect combination of a cool, strategic mind and a warm, creative heart. I was immensely proud of him and our little family, and the piece that completed that perfection was my mother-in-law, Carol. If there were a Mother-in-Law of the Year award, I'm sure Carol would win first prize. Since she moved in with us, she never interfered in my professional or personal life. She always said Evelyn's work is very stressful. As a family, we should make things easier for her so she can concentrate. She took better care of me than my own mother. Every morning, a hot breakfast awaited me on the table. Every night, a foot bath with aromatic herbs was ready for me. She never complained, never asked for anything, simply took care of the whole family from the background. She bragged about me openly. Whenever her friends came over, she would show me off. This is my daughter-in-law. She's brilliant, talented, she's built an empire on her own. My James got the luck of 3 lifetimes marrying her. Those words, ladies and gentlemen, were worth more than any expensive gift. They made me feel loved, recognized, and gave me even more motivation to keep going. I considered her my own mother. I confided everything in her. And then when Sophie appeared, that perfect picture seemed to be adorned with a touch of kindness. Carol introduced her as the daughter of a dear friend from her small hometown who had passed away with a very precarious family situation. Seeing that freshman student smile with light, shy eyes, I didn't hesitate to open the doors of my home to her. Sophie did not disappoint our trust. She presented herself as the model of innocence and gratitude. She took care of Noah diligently, patiently, taught him to read and played with him With the rest of the family, she was always respectful and helpful. She did the housework quietly without anyone asking. I grew very fond of her, bought her new clothes, books, and treated her like a sister. I thought that taking in such a helpless girl would bring more blessings to our family. I was completely submerged in that full happiness, in that perfect picture of which I was a part. I didn't realize that every brushstroke of that picture, the exemplary husband, the golden mother-in-law, the innocent tutor, were actually strokes of a grand deception. The sentence from Noah, "I saw Miss Sophie give Daddy a kiss," was like a small stone thrown into a calm lake, creating ripples that revealed the hidden mud at the bottom. After that night, I could no longer look at my family with the same eyes. I began to watch to pay attention, and when doubt settles in the heart, even the most insignificant gesture becomes suspicious. I realized that the relationship between James and Sophie was not one of simple affection. There were strange glances, accidental touches of hands that lasted longer than necessary. When I was present, they kept a prudent distance, but as soon as I turned my back, they found a way to get closer. And the director of this whole play was none other than my mother-in-law. Carol, my understanding mother-in-law, continuously created opportunities that couldn't be more opportune. "James, tonight Evelyn has to entertain some clients. You have dinner with Sophie and Noah. I've made plans with my friends to go line dancing." Or, "Oh, Sophie, your laptop is broken again. Let James take a look at it. He's very handy." She always found the perfect excuse to leave them alone. Her staging was so subtle that if it weren't for my son's words, I would never have noticed. My heart ached. It turned out that all the love and pride she professed for me were false. I decided to test them. To confirm my suspicions, I devised a detailed plan. I told my team of assistants, "Prepare an urgent business trip to Singapore for me." With a packed schedule of unmissable meetings. Everything, from the plane tickets and hotel confirmation to the emails with partners, had to look real. That night, during dinner, I announced my trip. "This weekend I have to go to Singapore for 3 days, I said in a somewhat tired tone. "A partner has requested an urgent last-minute meeting. It can't be postponed. It's such a sudden trip. Noah will be in your care, Mom and Sophie." I glanced at their reactions and I saw it. I saw a very brief, quickly hidden flash of joy in the eyes of all three. Carol hurried to say, "Oh dear, don't worry about a thing and have a safe trip. Noah has his grandmother, his father, and Sophie to take care of him. Work comes first." James also appeared supportive. "Go with peace of mind, honey. Don't worry about us. Take good care of yourself on the trip, okay?" Sophie simply lowered her head, but I saw a faint smile form on her lips. They had taken the bait. My trap was set. Now I just had to wait for their show to begin. What I didn't know was that the play I was about to witness not only contained sentimental betrayal but also a cruel conspiracy, an abyss of human evil I could never have imagined. The day I went to the airport, my family performed a touching and perfect farewell. James hugged me tightly, giving me all sorts of recommendations from taking care of myself to calling him every day. My mother-in-law put a small bottle of lavender oil in my purse for headaches on the plane. Sophie stood to the side with teary eyes. "Come back soon, Mrs. Evans. We'll miss you and Noah." Watching their performance, I felt an icy chill. I also played my part, kissing my husband and my son, promising to bring back many gifts. But as soon as the car pulled out of the driveway, my smile vanished, leaving only a steely determination. I arrived at JFK Airport. I checked in as if it were real. I even took a photo of my boarding pass and posted it on my social media with the caption, "Goodbye, NYC. See you in 3 days." It was part of my plan to make them believe I was gone, to make them take off their masks. But instead of going through security, I discreetly slipped out another door. I took a taxi and headed to a luxury hotel in Manhattan not far from my home. I had to wait for the right moment when sleep and a lack of vigilance would make them vulnerable. Sitting in the cold, luxurious hotel room, my heart was on fire. I couldn't eat or sleep. Scenarios kept playing out in my mind. What if I was being paranoid? What if I was destroying my own happiness? But then the images of their furtive glances and Carol's excuses came back to my mind, dispelling any doubt. No, my instincts couldn't be wrong. I waited patiently, watching the hands of the clock move. 10 p.m., 11 p.m. At midnight on the dot, I stood up, put on dark clothes, and left the hotel. I took a taxi back to my house. The neighborhood was silent, plunged into darkness. My house was also dark, with a deceptively peaceful appearance. But I knew that behind that calm, a dirty truth was hiding. I used my own key to open the gate without making a sound. I tiptoed across the garden, my heart about to burst from my chest. Each step on the dew-damp grass felt incredibly heavy. The closer I got, the harder it was to breathe. I held my breath, inserted the key into the main lock, and turned it gently. The door opened to absolute silence, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I closed the door carefully and stood motionless in the darkness listening. And then, I heard it. From the second floor from our bedroom came muffled laughter and whispers. My heart sank. I knew I was right. I went up the marble stairs barefoot, step by step, as if treading on broken glass. The closer I got, the clearer the voices became. It was my husband's voice, and another woman's. The bedroom door was ajar. A thin line of light projected onto the dark hallway. I approached slowly, my heart beating so hard I feared they could hear it. I held my breath and peeked through the crack. And then, the scene that hit my eyes. Ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't just a betrayal, it was a horrific scene, a ruthless conspiracy, a humiliation so profound I felt the blood freeze in my veins. In our own marital bed, wearing the seductive red silk nightgown that I had bought myself, was Sophie. Snuggled in my husband's arms. They weren't sleeping. They were whispering. James's hand was stroking her hair. "Do you really love me?" I heard Sophie's cooing voice. "Of course I do, my love," James replied, kissing her forehead. "We just have to wait a little longer, and you and I can be together without having to hide from that stupid wife of mine." That stupid wife of mine. The man who whispered words of love to me every night now called me that, but the horror didn't end there. At that moment, my mother-in-law, Carol, came up from the kitchen with 2 glasses of warm milk on a tray. She showed no surprise or anger. On the contrary, she approached the nightstand, handed a glass to Sophie with infinite tenderness, and said, "Drink up, dear, so you can build your strength, and my grandchild grows up healthy and strong." Then she leaned over to tuck in her son and his lover and smiled. A smile of satisfaction like a director who has just completed a brilliant scene. I had to cover my mouth with my hands to keep from screaming. My whole body was trembling, my mind reeling. The 3 people I had trusted most in the world, my husband, my mother-in-law, whom I saw as a mother, and the little sister I had taken in, had conspired to stage a perfect play to deceive me and trample on my feelings. All my happiness, all my fulfillment was a sham. I was just a fool, a puppet in their show. The pain was no longer jealousy, but the collapse of an entire world. In that moment of horror, witnessing the rawest, dirtiest truth, I almost lost my mind. I wanted to storm and overturn that bed, scream, curse, expose the true faces of those 3 disgusting people. I wanted the whole world to know how they had treated me. But then my son sleeping peacefully in the next room brought me back. His steady breathing audible through the crack of the door was like a splash of cold water that doused the fire of my anger. I couldn't make a scene. I couldn't let my son witness such a terrible thing. I couldn't allow his childhood to be scarred by the adult's breakdown. And my mind, accustomed to business crises, told me it was not the time to act impulsively. If I confronted them now, what would they do? They would deny it. James would say he was set up. Sophie would cry and say she was forced. And Carol, with her talent for acting, would once again play the role of the suffering mother-in-law trying to mediate. I would achieve nothing but a shouting match, a momentary satisfaction, and then they would be even more on guard, hiding their conspiracy better. No, I needed more. I needed them to truly pay. I needed a final, irrefutable blow. The extreme pain transformed into a terrifying coldness. I retreated in silence. I left the house without a sound and returned to the hotel like a sleepwalker. I didn't sleep all night sitting on the cold sofa waiting for dawn. I didn't cry anymore. In my mind, a plan was beginning to take shape. They had made me a spectator in their play. Now I would become the lead actress in mine. The next morning, I timed it perfectly. At 7 a.m., when I knew they would be up and have erased all traces of the previous night, I took a taxi back to my house. I walked in, dragging my suitcase, looking exhausted as if I had just arrived from a long red-eye flight. The 3 of them sitting at the breakfast table were stunned to see me. "Evelyn, what are you doing here at this hour?" James stammered, panic and guilt written all over his face. "The partner had an unforeseen issue and canceled the meeting at the last minute," I said in a hoarse voice. I had purposely avoided drinking water all night. "I caught the first flight back. I didn't have time to call. I'm exhausted." Carol jumped up with a somewhat forced smile, trying to look concerned. "Oh, it's so good to have you back. Are you tired? Go on up and rest, dear. We'll take care of everything." Sophie kept her head down, not daring to look at me, her hands clasped perfectly, playing her role as a shy small-town girl. I looked at the three of them, these great actors. I smiled inwardly. My play had just begun. No, it's all right. I'll take a shower and come down for breakfast with everyone. To be with my family, I said, and I dragged my suitcase upstairs straight to the bedroom. I knew they were following my every move, holding their breath. I opened the door as naturally as possible. The room was impeccable. No trace of the night before the bed perfectly made. Sophie's cheap perfume had been replaced by the lemongrass scent I always used. They were quick at erasing evidence. Half an hour later, I came out of the bathroom, put on comfortable loungewear, and went downstairs with a fresh expression as if nothing had happened. My apparent ignorance completely relieved them. They believed their deception had worked, that I was still the same fool as always. And that arrogance gave me the time I needed to prepare my final counterattack, a blow that would destroy their perfect farce. I became an actress, putting on the mask of innocence so I could secretly investigate and uncover the whole truth behind their play. Life in the house returned to its apparent normality, but for me, it had become a grand stage where every day I acted and watched the performance of others. I continued to be a loving wife, a devoted daughter-in-law, but when they weren't looking at night, I transformed into another person, a cold and determined investigator. I decided to install hidden cameras. I needed proof. One in the bedroom wasn't enough. Their conspiracy went beyond a simple affair. It must have a greater purpose. To uncover it, I needed a complete surveillance network. Taking advantage of their absences, I secretly installed microcameras, cleverly disguised one in a pen on James's desk, another in the mantel clock in the living room, where they often met, and the most audacious one, hidden in a photo frame in my mother-in-law's own room. I needed to see and hear everything, but internal surveillance wasn't enough. I needed to know what they did outside. I contacted a prestigious private investigation firm in New York City that I had worked with on business matters. I asked their best agents to follow all three of them, James, Carol, and especially Sophie. I need to know everything I told the head of the team. Their schedules, their meetings, their financial transactions, no matter how small, and all in the utmost secrecy. The two-pronged investigation, internal and external, began. Every day was a mental torture. By day, I smiled and spoke words of love to those who were betraying me. By night, I faced alone the raw images and information that came in. Soon the first clues appeared, shattering the innocent image of the tutor, Sophie. The detective's report revealed that she was not living like a humble student. When she left the house, she wasn't going to the university or the library, but to luxury spas, designer boutiques, and expensive restaurants. She was chauffeured in high-end cars and spent money like water. She didn't seem like a student taken in out of charity, but a queen enjoying life. Her relationships were also complex. She frequently met with suspicious-looking men in discreet cafes. They were quick meetings, just to exchange something. The story that she was an orphan and a friend of my mother-in-law's was a complete lie. The detectives verified that her parents were alive in her hometown and were simple farmers. At the same time, Carol's financial reports showed irregularities. She, a retired teacher with a modest pension, had enormous expenses on her credit card. She had bought diamond jewelry and designer handbags worth thousands of dollars. Where was this money coming from? Certainly not from James, whose finances I monitored closely. These clues, though inconclusive, painted a dark picture. Sophie was not as simple as she seemed, and a mysterious flow of money was reaching her and Carol. But where was it coming from? And what was their ultimate goal? The sentimental betrayal was just the tip of a much more sinister iceberg, and I knew the submerged part was the truly terrifying one. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The answer came to me one night in the most chilling way possible. That day, I told my family I had an important gala dinner and would be back very late. In reality, I stayed in my car, parked on a corner near the house with my laptop on my lap, watching the live feeds from the house cameras. I saw the three of them, after putting Noah to bed, gather in James's home office. That room, which I had designed for him, filled with memories of our beginnings, was now the meeting room for a dark conspiracy. I activated the audio recording. The sound from the hidden camera in the pen was crystal clear. At first, they chatted about trivial things, but then Carol got straight to the point. This can't go on. We can't have Evelyn living in this house. What if one day she finds out everything? Then we'll get a divorce. Mom, James replied, his voice somewhat tired. We'll drag things out, wait for Sophie to give birth, and then file the papers. Even if she doesn't want to, she'll have to accept a divorce. Carol let out a laugh that even through the speakers chilled my blood. Do you think it's that easy? Do you think that bitch will leave empty-handed? She's a wolf, son. The company is hers. This house is hers. What would you get from a divorce? A small portion according to the law. Not even enough for Sophie's whims. No, son. She paused and continued lowering her voice to a venomous tone. There's only one way. Quick and clean. If she disappears, everything will become yours as her legal husband and then our grandson's. Much cleaner than a messy divorce with trials and complications. I listened and felt my heart stop. Disappears. She was talking about my death. A mother-in-law planning her daughter-in-law's murder with the same casualness as talking about going to the market. Mom, what are you saying? James's voice trembled. What are you planning to do? I won't do anything, Carol said. But accidents happen all the time, don't they? And then Sophie, the innocent-looking girl, spoke. Her voice was syrupy, but every word was pure poison. Your mother is right, honey. Evelyn is too smart and strong. With a simple divorce, she would never leave us alone. She would never allow my son to inherit anything. She paused and proposed an idea of unsurpassed cruelty. I've heard Evelyn likes to drive up to the mountains on weekends to relax. If her car's brakes were to fail on a lonely mountain pass, no one would suspect a thing. It would just be a tragic accident. My body went numb. I couldn't breathe. They weren't just cheating on me. They were planning my murder. They were discussing my death in cold, hard detail. But what shattered me was my husband's reaction. James was silent for a long time. For a moment, I had a sliver of hope that he would object, that he would stop this insane plan, that he still had a shred of humanity left. But no. After the silence, he spoke. His voice trembled slightly, but not with fear, with calculation. But, is it safe? What if we get caught? Sophie was quick to coax him. If we do it carefully, no one will know. I have a contact who can do it very cleanly. I just need your approval, my love. Don't you want me and our son Carol delivered the final blow? That's right, son. You have to be decisive. Do you want to live in her shadow your whole life, or do you want to be the master of your own destiny and let your son hold his head high? The incitement of his mother, the pleas of his lover, and perhaps his own accumulated envy won the battle. I heard James take a deep breath and say the phrase that slammed the last door of hope shut for me. The phrase that turned him from a traitor into a monster. All right. But it has to look like a real accident. In that instant, I stopped feeling pain or fear, only an infinite void. The perfect picture had shattered, revealing the sharp fragments of a murderous plot. I felt my legs go weak listening to such a terrifying conspiracy. The three people I had trusted most, my husband, my mother-in-law, and the tutor I had taken in, were not only betraying me but planning my death in cold blood to take the assets I had worked so hard to build. James's final phrase, "All right, but it has to look like a real accident," echoed in my head, sharp as a razor, cutting the last thread of affection and hope I had left. Sitting motionless in my car on that dark corner, I was frozen, my back soaked in a cold sweat. For the first time in my life, I felt real fear, a fear that came from the people closest to me. This was no longer about infidelity or a dispute over money. It was a murder plot. My life was in danger. For a moment, I wanted to start the car and flee, go to the police. But my mind, accustomed to extreme situations, stopped me. If I acted now, they would deny it. They'd say it was a heated argument, that they were just talking. The recording was important evidence, but it only proved intent, not the criminal act. To unmask them irrefutably for the law to punish them as they deserved, I needed more. I needed proof of action. I needed to catch them red-handed. A bold and extremely dangerous decision formed in my mind. I would not run. I would face them. I would become the bait to lure the beast out of its lair. The first thing I did that very night was save the recording in multiple secure locations. An encrypted cloud, a secret email, and a tiny USB drive I always carried with me. I knew that video was my life insurance, my only weapon. If anything happened to me, it would be automatically sent to my lawyer and the police. Once the evidence was secured, I began the next act of my play. The next morning, I continued to smile, greet them, and prepare breakfast. But inside, I was no longer the hurt Evelyn, but a cold warrior calculating every move in a game of life and death. Looking at their smiling false faces filled me with infinite disgust. James asked me with fake concern if I was tired. Carol brought me broth to regain my strength. Sophie greeted me with her innocent gaze. They were wonderful actors. They were treating me like a dead woman, like a lamb waiting for the slaughter. But they didn't know that this lamb had turned into a wolf overnight. I knew they needed the perfect opportunity to execute their accident, and I was going to give it to them. A few days later during dinner, I casually commented, "This weekend I'm craving some fresh air. I think I'll go with my friend Lucy to a spa in the Berkshires. A couple of days. I'll drive. I need to relax and clear my head." I saw the glint in Carol's eyes, the fleeting smile on Sophie's face, and James's hand pausing midway to his mouth. They had taken the bait. My bait was cast. James even feigned concern. "Will you be okay driving alone? Do you want me to come with you?" "No, honey." I politely refused. "You stay with Mom and the boy. Besides, Lucy is going through a tough time and we need some privacy. It's been a while since I've driven a long distance. I'm looking forward to it." My plan was in motion. The fateful weekend trip. I knew they would act before then, and my team of detectives and I were ready to record everything. The following days, the atmosphere at home became strange. On the surface, everything was normal, but I felt an underlying tension. They treated me with exaggerated kindness, trying to lull me before the final blow. The more they acted, the more disgusted I felt. Meanwhile, my detectives worked tirelessly. They informed me that Sophie had secretly met with a suspicious-looking man at a mechanic's garage in an industrial part of Queens. They exchanged a small bag. I knew it was the tool for their plan. Friday night arrived the eve of my trip. I said I was going to bed early to be rested, but in reality, I locked myself in my office, my eyes glued to the screens, showing the images from the 4 security cameras I had installed in the garage. One pointed directly at my car. Another covered the entire space. One at the entrance, and a micro camera under my own car, aimed directly at the brake system. Time passed slowly. 11 p.m. midnight. The house was silent. I started to get nervous. What if they had realized something? At 1 a.m., when I was starting to doze off, the door connecting the house to the garage opened stealthily. My heart stopped. 2 figures crept in, James and an unknown man with a cap pulled low over his face. From the detective's photos, I knew he was the same one Sophie had met with. They didn't turn on the light, only using a phone's flashlight. James motioned for the man to approach my car. He, my husband, the man who swore to protect me now, stood watch while another sabotaged my vehicle to kill me. I had to cover my mouth to keep from sobbing. Even though I was prepared, witnessing it was an indescribable pain. The man was a professional. He quickly slid under the car. The camera below recorded everything. I saw clearly as he used a special tool to make a small cut in the front left brake line. He didn't sever it completely, just enough for the brake fluid to leak out slowly. A diabolical plan. In the city, I wouldn't notice anything, but coming down a mountain pass, the brakes would suddenly fail. A very natural accident. Once finished, the man got out and gave a signal to James. My husband pulled out a wad of cash and handed it to him. The transaction was complete. They left the garage, thinking their plan was perfect, not knowing that their entire criminal act had been recorded with impeccable clarity. I stood there in front of the monitor, frozen. I had the video of the conspiracy and the video of the execution. Enough evidence to bring all 3 of them to justice. Their play was over. It was time for the curtain of justice to rise. I picked up the phone and sent all the videos to my lawyer, Mr. Ramos, with a simple message: "Everything is ready. We act tomorrow." I didn't sleep that night. I watched the videos over and over, not to wallow in the pain, but to burn into my memory the true faces of those I had loved with all my heart. My heart was ice. I felt no pain or hatred, only a cold, iron-willed determination. Saturday dawned, the day that, according to their plans, would be the last of my life. But for me, it was the dawn of justice. First thing in the morning, I sent all the evidence to my lawyer and contacted the lead detective of the police department with whom we were already coordinated. A plan for an in-the-act arrest was drawn up, meticulous and discreet. Plainclothes officers surrounded the house. I knew this was the final move, and I couldn't afford any mistakes. After making sure my son was safe with my most trusted nanny, I began my final performance. I dressed in a designer athletic set, energetic and comfortable. I put on light makeup and pulled my hair back, trying to radiate joy. I went down to the living room, pulling a small suitcase. The 3 of them, James, Carol, and Sophie, were already there with radiant smiles, ready to see me off. Seeing me, they put on an incredibly fake show of concern. "You're up early," James said, taking my suitcase with a nauseating gallantry. "Did you have breakfast? Mom made the avocado toast you like so much." "Yes, I've already eaten." "I want to leave early before it gets too hot," I replied, with the same sweetness, though inside I felt infinite disgust. Carol took my hand with the expression of a mother-in-law who adores her daughter-in-law. Drive carefully, dear. Slowly, don't rush. Especially coming down the mountain pass, she added. Call us when you get there so we know you're okay. She even emphasized coming down the mountain pass like a final curse. Sophie stood to the side with her innocent gaze and quiet voice. Have a wonderful time, Mrs. Evans. We'll miss you and Noah. Ladies and gentlemen, witnessing that scene, I no longer felt anything. They were sending me off to my death with words of love. They were eagerly awaiting the news of a tragic accident. They didn't know that these would be their last words, their final performance before the curtain of justice fell. I smiled at them one last time. A smile that must have been terrifying. Yes, take care of yourselves. I'm leaving, but I'll be back soon. I walked toward the garage with them following. They wanted to make sure their plan didn't fail. The garage was silent. My white sports car gleamed under the light. No one would guess it was a death trap. I approached the car. James solicitous opened the door for me in a final act of the perfect husband. Be careful, honey, he whispered in my ear. A gesture that once seemed romantic now sent shivers down my spine. I nodded, about to get in, my heart beating a little faster. I knew it was time. Just as my hand touched the car door, just as I was about to get in, a firm voice shattered the silence. Stop. Police. The automatic garage door shot up, flooding the space with light and dozens of uniformed officers who stormed in. From the other parked cars emerged my lawyer and his team. All exits were blocked. James Evans, Carol Evans, Sophie Mendoza, a detective's voice thundered, echoing in the garage. You are under arrest for conspiracy and attempted murder. The three of them froze. Pure terror on their faces. All their smiles and masks vanished, leaving only absolute panic. What? What is this? Carol babbled, her face as white as a sheet. Who are you? This is a mistake. My daughter-in-law was going on a trip. We were just seeing her off. There's no mistake, ma'am, said Mr. Ramos, my lawyer, approaching and holding up a tablet. On the screen, the video of James and the mechanic sabotaging my car the night before played silently. Your entire criminal act has been recorded, and as for that trip, it never existed. Seeing the video, James seemed to lose all strength. He collapsed to his knees, trembling and murmuring, No, it can't be. Sophie let out a sharp scream, her eyes wide with terror, and fainted. Only Carol, in her desperation, tried to fight back, screaming like a wild animal. It's a trap, it's her, Evelyn. She set this whole thing up to destroy my family. She pointed her finger at me, but no one believed her anymore. Her farce had been dismantled in the most unexpected and humiliating way. The cold handcuffs snapped shut on their wrists, bringing an end to the terrifying play they had directed themselves. At the police station, the atmosphere was oppressive, a stark contrast to the fake luxury of my home. The three were interrogated in separate rooms. I, as the victim and main witness, spent hours with the investigators providing all the evidence I had gathered. When they were brought together for the first confrontation, their true personalities were laid bare. Carol, even after seeing the video, clung to her denial and started her favorite game, blaming others. I don't know anything, she screamed, tears in her eyes. That video is fake. Evelyn set us up. And the conversation, I was just joking. I was angry. Who doesn't say things they don't mean? Then she pointed at Sophie. It was her. That harpy seduced my son. She put these ideas in his head to get our money. My son is a victim. Sophie, seeing herself accused, exploded. The shyness and innocence were gone. You're lying, she screamed, crying with rage. You were the one who sought me out. You promised me a life of luxury if I helped you get rid of Evelyn. It was all your idea. Even the accident. You gave me the money to pay the mechanic. She turned to James, pleading. Honey, say something. Tell them you loved me too, right? And James, the center of all the evil, broke down. He didn't deny or blame anyone. With his head bowed, he confessed everything between sobs. He admitted to his affair, his insecurities, his envy of my success. And most painfully, he admitted that it was his mother, Carol, who constantly poisoned his mind, telling him I looked down on him, that I was a threat. She told me if Evelyn disappeared, everything would be mine, he said in a broken voice. That it was the only way to be a real man and not live in my wife's shadow. She planned everything, and I was too much of a coward to say no. His confession made it clear. Carol was the mastermind, the brain behind it all. It wasn't just about money. It was about power, about regaining control over her son. Her envy had turned her into a monster. The scene of mutual accusations and the late confession painted the tragic portrait of a family self-destructed by greed, ego, and weakness. Their play was over, but the tragedy of their lives was just beginning. James's desperate confession pointed directly to the true mastermind, his mother, Carol. Unmasked by her own son and faced with irrefutable evidence, she finally collapsed. Sitting in the interrogation chair, she was no longer an elegant lady or an understanding mother-in-law, just a defeated old woman. Her confession was not one of remorse, but a venomous justification of her actions. She admitted that from the first day she met me, though she praised me on the outside, inside she hated me. She was envious of my success, my strength, because her son, her only pride, lacked all of it. She was too brilliant, she said in a monotone voice. She made my son look weak beside her. The man is supposed to be the pillar, but in that house, it was the other way around. Every time I heard someone praise Evelyn's husband, I felt a stab. It was supposed to be James's wife. She recounted her plan. From the beginning, she tried to wear me down with criticism and pressure, hoping I would give up. Seeing that didn't work, she sought a new weapon. I needed a docile daughter-in-law, she confessed. One who knew how to stand behind her husband, who would give me a grandchild and whom I could control. Not a queen who thinks she's the center of the universe. She found Sophie. She saw the ambition behind her innocent facade and promised her a life of luxury. She orchestrated the entire farce, directing Sophie's every move from gaining my trust to seducing James. She even admitted to staging small thefts in the house to create chaos and exhaust me. Regarding the murder plot, she no longer denied it. Her voice turned icy. A divorce was complicated. Evelyn is too smart. The best solution was for her to disappear naturally. An accident would fix everything. The company, the assets, everything would go to James and then to my grandchild. It was a perfect plan. She even confessed how she manipulated her son, inventing that I was unfaithful and planned to fire him from the company. Her confession revealed everything. The mind behind the conspiracy was hers, motivated by envy and a wounded ego at seeing her son outshone by his wife. She was willing to kill just to regain a false sense of prestige. The confession closed the investigation but opened another storm public opinion. The news leaked and exploded in the media. The story had all the ingredients for a scandal, love, betrayal, money, and an attempted murder. Sensational headlines filled the newspapers and news sites. But alongside the outrage and support, conspiracy theories emerged. Some said I couldn't be that good, that where there's smoke, there's fire. Others speculated that I had orchestrated the whole thing myself to get rid of my husband. These rumors began to affect my company. I knew I had to act not with a social media fight, but with an official, decisive counterattack. I organized a press conference. I didn't appear as a weeping victim, but in a white power suit, serene and strong. I wanted the world to see that, despite the storm, I was still standing. I began by thanking the police and the public. Then I said, I am here not to judge, the law will take care of that, but to tell the truth as a wife, a mother, and a woman who placed her trust in the wrong place. My lawyer, Mr. Ramos, presented the key evidence, a clip of the audio where they planned the accident, the expert report confirming the brake sabotage, and short videos of James and Sophie's intimacy in my own bed. We didn't show everything, just enough to destroy their lies and silence any rumors. The press room fell silent. The journalists went from skepticism to shock and indignation. The public image of my perfect family shattered, revealing the face of greed and malice. The clear and just truth had finally come to light. After the shocking press conference, public opinion swung entirely in my favor. Social pressure ensured the case would be tried with the utmost severity. And then the day of the trial arrived, the day that would not only sentence their crimes but also my marriage and years of suffering. The courtroom was packed. I, sitting in the victim's section next to my lawyer, wore a black suit, my gaze firm. In the defendant's box sat them Carol, her hair grayed and her eyes lost, Sophie gaunt and looking down. And James, he was staring at me, his eyes filled with a regret that came far too late. The prosecutor read the charges, each word a hammer blow in the silent room. When the videos were projected as evidence, the outrage was palpable. The defense could barely articulate a word against the evidence. In his final statement, James surprised me. He didn't ask for clemency for himself. He stood up, turned to me, and with a deep bow of his head said, "Your Honor, I have no excuses for my crime. I have been a terrible husband, an unworthy father, and a coward. I accept any punishment. My only request is not for this court, but for my wife Evelyn. I know I have no right, but I beg you. Do not completely erase my image from our son's life. When he grows up, please tell him he had a father who made an unforgivable mistake, but who always loved him. Please let him know of me, even if it's just through pictures. It's the last thing I dare to ask." His words left me frozen. He wasn't asking for himself, but for our son. I faced a terrible choice. Part of me wanted to erase every trace of them from our lives to protect Noah with a wall of silence. But another part wondered if that was what was best for him. Should I lie and say his father had died or tell him the devastating truth? What would harm him more in the long run? After deliberation, the judge delivered the sentence. They received severe and just sentences. Carol, as the mastermind, received the longest sentence. James and Sophie would pay for their crime with years of their lives behind bars. After the trial, I asked to see James one last time. He entered the visitor's room, handcuffed in a prison uniform. He didn't dare look at me. "I heard your request," I said calmly. "The divorce is final. It's over. But regarding our son, I've made a decision." He looked up, expectant. "I will not lie to him or erase your existence. When he is old enough to understand, I will tell him the whole truth. The truth about a father who loved him very much, but who also made a terrible mistake. I will teach him that we can all make mistakes. And what's important is to take responsibility and repent. His future, whether he accepts you or not, will depend on your true remorse in the coming years. Try to be a good person, not for me, but for him." I stood up and left without looking back. I heard him call my name and then I broke down and cried. I didn't give him my forgiveness, but I gave him a reason to change. And in doing so, I also freed myself. My son's life and mine started a new chapter. I stopped being a strong, solitary woman. I spent more time with Noah, teaching him not with resentment, but with fables about truth, forgiveness, and the importance of defending oneself from evil. My company continued to thrive, but I learned to balance, to delegate, and to enjoy the small things I had forgotten. I started dancing, taking up flower arranging, rediscovering joy beyond balance sheets. Dear friends, my story ends here. I tell it not to boast, but to share the lessons I learned at a very high price. First, be wary of what is too perfect. Life is not. Sometimes perfection is just a well-staged farce. Never ignore your intuition. It is often your best guardian, the one that detects the danger your reason cannot yet see. Second, when you discover betrayal, be brave and decisive. Do not give in or hope for them to change. With evil people, forgiveness is complicity, and silence is an opportunity for them to do more harm. Protecting yourself sometimes requires being ruthless. It is not malice, it is self-defense. And finally, believe in the power of rebirth. True happiness is not a flawless image from the beginning. It is the peace found after having weathered the storm. Do not be afraid of your scars. They are proof of your strength. Do not let the past define you. Turn it into a lesson to build a brighter future. The journey of Evelyn, the woman we have followed, has come to an end. But the lessons she leaves resonate deeply. Her story is a warning about the dangerous facade of perfection and the importance of listening to our inner voice. It reminds us that not all that glitters is gold, and that our intuition is an early warning system we should never ignore. It also teaches us about the nature of evil, about the wolves in sheep's clothing who live beside us. The villains of this story were not obvious monsters, but people who wore masks of kindness, the perfect mother-in-law, the exemplary husband, the innocent tutor. They used Evelyn's trust as a weapon against her. The lesson is bitter. Not everyone who treats you well wishes you well. To recognize them, we must observe their actions when they think no one is watching, and how they react when their interests are threatened. And when the mask falls, Evelyn's story teaches us to transform from victims into strategists. Instead of succumbing to pain, she converted her tears into fuel for her intellect. She acted with a plan, not on impulse. She teaches us that to win a battle, intelligence is more powerful than anger. Justice doesn't come to those who only cry, but to those who fight for it with cunning. Finally, her decision at the trial is a profound lesson on motherhood. By choosing to tell her son the difficult truth, she gave him the best possible protection, not a false, perfect world, but the tools to face an imperfect world with courage and discernment. Dear friends, each of our lives is a book. There will be bright chapters and dark ones. May this story serve as a light to navigate through the shadows. Always remember your kindness is a gift. Do not give it to those who do not deserve it. Your boundaries are your honor. Do not let anyone trample them. And your heart, though wounded, must never be hardened by hatred. Always keep a warm heart, a cool mind, and a straight spine. Only then can you weather any storm and find your own port of peace. Thank you for joining us in this reflection.